It's time to see who's got heart. Welcome back to Street Scores. It's your boy Rico giving y'all that 2018 Week 15 preview edition of Redskins Report. Redskins versus the Jaguars in Jacksonville, Sunday, December 16th at 1 p.m. Never seen a preseason game this late in the season before, so this should be interesting. I'm excited to see who's going to play with passion and pride despite all of the drama. In this video, I provide 4 major points of emphasis that the Redskins need to focus in on for this victory that we're about to get. And then I go to my list of bounce back for people or groups of people who need to bounce back from the previous game. Let's get it. "14th game of this 2018 season, y'all. It's been dark since it's been cold outside. Fresh off of one of the most embarrassing losses I've witnessed from this team. Mark Sanchez, with all of the injuries on the Redskins team, went out there and went scoreless through 2.5 quarters. Well, actually, scratch that. They scored 7 points, but it was for the New York Giants defense. The offense actually started to move the ball and score points once Josh Johnson came in. The defense was getting mutilated, even though Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't even playing. And Saquon Barkley looked like LaDainian Tomlinson in his prime against us. It was all tragic. But that's the past. Let's look at the future, which is the Jaguars game coming up. The Redskins are 5-1 against the Jaguars in all-time regular season series. The last time we played the Jaguars, we slumped them up 41-10. Skunk. We have outscored them in our matchups 163-111, 27.2 points per game to their 18.5 points per game. They never beat us in Landover. The only win came in Jacksonville. But anyway, let's get to point 1. Make Cody Kessler look like Cody Kessler. He was drafted by the Browns in the 3rd round of the 2016 draft. In 18 starts and 12 total games played for them, Kessler threw for 1,506 yards, had 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and around a 64 completion percentage. Not terrible, but stats don't tell the whole story. But the fact that he was a 3rd-string quarterback behind Robert Griffin III and Josh McCown, and only became the starter after Robert Griffin and Josh McCown got hurt, tells enough of the story. He was later traded to the Jaguars for a conditional 7th-round pick, and after the Jaguars just couldn't take any more of Blake Bortles, even after just extending him, Cody Kessler was given the start. Through 2 starts and 1 game where he came in for the bench Blake Bortles, he has 546 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 66 completion percentage, and his longest pass play going for 35 yards. Not game-changing, but at least he's not throwing the game away. He's allowing the Jaguars to do what they do best, which is run the ball and defend well. Sounds like a 6-3 team I used to know. In his 2 starts, the Jaguars have only scored a total of 15 points, and remarkably, they've won a game out of those 2 games. They beat the Colts 6-0. You would have to pay me to watch that game, but I say all of this to make this point. He's not much of a threat. Josh Johnson put up more points in a quarter and a half than Cody Kessler, who has been on the team all season and training camp, so he knows the playbook and personnel, has put up in 2 entire games starting. And with Cody Kessler being Cody Kessler, Greg Minuski and the Redskins defense need to focus in on shutting down Leonard Fournette and the Jaguars rushing game. When the Jaguars rush for at least 100 yards this season, they are 3-3. Once they have reached 100 yards rushing, they have a 50% chance of winning the game. Shut down this running game that this entire organization depends on and force Cody Kessler to win the game with his arm. This is the most pivotal piece to the Redskins' victory. Call Cody Kessler's bluff and force him to become Tom Brady to will his team to a win. And I'll definitely take the odds on that every time. Point 2. Please limit the penalties. The Redskins are already one of the most injured teams in the NFL, if not the most injured. I definitely feel like our injured reserve team could beat any other team's injured reserve in an 11-on-11 game. Shoot, most teams wouldn't be able to even get 11 men on the field. But with all of these injuries, the Redskins' margin of error is so small. One thing is turnovers, and another game killer is penalties. A very underrated game killer. Against the Eagles, the Redskins committed 10 penalties for 69 yards, with 7 of the penalties being called on the offense. That's one of the major reasons the Redskins lost 28-13. Again, against the Giants, penalties played a major role in a big loss, 40-16 to be exact. In this game, the Redskins had a season-high 15 penalties for a total of a second highest 135 penalty yards. It is very hard to win games in the NFL when you are shooting yourself in the foot. And it is impossible to win games when you shoot yourself in the foot while there are 17 players on the IR and many more out of the game but not even on IR. Admittingly, a lot of these penalties come from these backups and people signed off the street. Things like snap counts for the offensive line and illegal fair catches by backup returners in the punt return game are a result of people who are underprepared being thrown out there to the wolves and expected to do jobs of people who had minicamp and training camp starter reps. But even with that being said, it is still just an excuse and the team has to play better anyway. Next man up. Minimize mistakes. Take the game out of the refs' hands, who have admittedly been hating on us a few games this year. Play well enough for the refs to not be able to dictate the outcome of the game. I'm tired of hearing that story over and over again. Point 3. This makeshift offensive line has to protect Josh Johnson against Saxonville. We are down to Trent Williams, who was having a very off year, fresh off of a very off game, probably his worst of his career against the Giants. Then there's recently signed Luke Bowanko, second year Chase Roulier, injured backup Tony Bergstrom, he's a backup and he's hurt. And then there's injured Morgan Moses, who is a guaranteed 2 offensive penalties every game. It's already a problem that we've gotten down to this lineup, but they also have to go out there and block Yannick Ngakoue, Malik Jackson, Marcel Darius, and Calais Campbell. And God forbid if one or more of these offensive linemen get hurt during the game, and we have to go to a very hurt Ty Nsekhe or just signed a couple of weeks ago Austin Howard or whoever else the Redskins signed right before this game starts. There will more than likely be an offensive lineman active on Sunday that isn't even on the team yet. It's crazy. It's just all bad. This would be a challenge against any NFL offensive line. The problems we're facing would be a challenge to take on with us against any defense in the NFL. But they have to block Saxonville this weekend. The only good thing going for them is that they are blocking for the most mobile quarterback this team has had since Robert Griffin. We need this offensive line to hold it down this week, please. And the fourth and final point, this one's a long one. The man of much controversy, Josh Johnson. This man is from Oakland. And I mean like Oakland. I wish the best for him. He will be under the microscope this game. He put together an impressive 1.5 quarters against the Giants. The offense actually started to move the ball. And he was able to do what Mark Sanchez couldn't. Score a point against the Giants. And with less time, Josh Johnson helped the Redskins escape a shutout, which would have been far more embarrassing than the game ended up actually being. Now granted, the Giants didn't have time to prepare for Josh Johnson and his mobility. They went through their entire week of practices preparing for a 4.88 40-yard dash Mark Sanchez. Then midway through the third quarter, here came 4.44 40-yard dash Josh Johnson with everything in the game and almost nothing to lose. But you can look at this the other way around too. 32-year-old Josh Johnson hadn't thrown an NFL regular season pass since 2011. And he had just signed with the team 5 days before he had to go out there and make plays against a pretty good Giants defense. Let me tell you how tragic the situation was. Josh Johnson admitted that he had to learn the names of Redskins players using Madden. Bro went out there and didn't even know folks' names like that, let alone concepts, plays, strategies, calls, snap counts, cadences, and all kinds of other very necessary aspects of football that lead to performing well. That man was basically out there playing 7-on-7, just tossing it. And even worse, there were moments where receivers who have been on the team since training camp were making mistakes like running into the same areas of the field as each other and essentially erasing themselves out as options. A QB can't throw a ball to a receiver where another receiver is. That's just double the coverage and double the risk and trouble. I'm basically just trying to let y'all know that the receivers did not make this game easy for him. The odds were definitely stacked against him. Y'all also have to remember, he was out there with a banged up, worst game in his career Trent Williams, a backup Luke Bowanko, second year Chase Roulier, backup and hurt Tony Bergstrom, and extra banged up Morgan Moses. His offensive line was out there struggling. But yet, while Mark Sanchez was sacked 5 times, Josh Johnson was never sacked. Also, while Mark Sanchez went 6 for 14 for 38 yards and 2 interceptions, Josh Johnson went 11 for 16 with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. He had good plays, great plays, and some bad plays, but he played far better than I expected against the Giants once he stepped in down 40-0, but it was still far from perfect. Sadly for Josh Johnson though, this is one of the best defenses in the NFL. Remind you, the Jaguars have won a game with Cody Kessler only scoring 6 points. Because why? The Jaguars defense limited league MVP contender Andrew Luck to 0 points. Everybody's talking about how Andrew Luck is back, and then the Jaguars, with not much to play for, went out there and shut him down. The Jaguars are 6th in the NFL in yards allowed per game and 8th in the NFL in points allowed per game. Mind you, they faced Andrew Luck with T.Y. Hilton twice, Deshaun Watson with D-Hop, Marcus Mariota twice, Tom Brady with Bill Belichick, the Giants in the first game of the season when they still had hope and expectations and everybody was healthy, and Pat Mahomes with Andy Reid. There's nothing we can show them that they haven't already seen this year. This is one of those games that will definitely be hard to evaluate. If Josh Johnson plays well, then that would be pretty surprising. But if he performs poorly, there will be multiple factors that point to the chance that this game will not be the norm. 1, he hasn't had time to prepare. He's been on the team, period, for 12 days as of Sunday. No mini camp, no training camp, nothing. Second point, he's playing with backups and hurt starters. Point 3, he's playing against a great defense that is the Jaguars. And lastly, number 4, look at that receiving group he's throwing to. It's just crazy. Depending on how poorly he plays, I will take it with a grain of salt because these 4 factors lead to terrible games for any quarterback. It's supposed to happen. It's practically expected. Again, Andrew Luck scored 0 points against this defense just 2 weeks ago, and he has been debated as a league MVP contender. So after this game, I will evaluate his performance, and if he plays poorly, then I will have to dive deeper into why he played poorly. Was it outside factors that most other quarterbacks don't have to deal with on Sunday? Or was it his own mistakes? I will have to separate what is his fault and what is practically inevitable. Not making excuses for him, but I am going to watch this game and review this film in the lens of understanding. I will look at traits similar to how I analyze college prospects. Look for traits, not stats. A lot of the time, environments and situations can drastically change how well a player performs, especially a quarterback. Just look at Michael Thomas. His numbers were so blah at Ohio State, but if you really actually looked at his traits and how talented he was at times, when the quarterback wasn't letting Nas down, you could tell when he was going to go to the NFL, he would be good. So that's like a primary example of how traits need to be analyzed and not just flat out look at the box score and keep it moving. You never know if Josh Johnson with the Redskins starters versus a non-elite defense would actually be a winning formula. Those are answers we will never get this season, sadly. And now it's time for my list of bounce backs. The people or groups of people who need to bounce back from the previous game. And number 1, run stopping unit has to come back. We have to get back to the 6-3 Redskins version of the run stop unit. Last week, the Redskins allowed 227 yards rushing. I can't even believe that. If somebody would have told me that like 7 weeks ago, I would have never believed it. This is the same personnel that was being debated as the best run-stop defense in the league just a few weeks ago. What happened? Wherever it went, it needs to show back up because the run game is the Jaguars' best friend. And even Leonard Fournette is not necessarily a dual-threat running back, so they depend on him to run like the old conventional running back. That's what they spend all of their time scheming for and drafting personnel for. So if our run defense can bounce back and take that away, it would essentially send their team into a panic on offense, improvising, making stuff up on the fly. And that's not what an offensive coordinator wants. Number 2, our run game needs to return. I just talked about how stopping their run game to force an underprepared quarterback to make plays, but even more important, getting our run game back on track to help our underprepared quarterback to perform well. That would help Josh Johnson so much. He shouldn't have to go out there and put the team on his back in his first start since 2011. AD had 16 yards rushing, Chris Thompson had 23, and Josh Johnson led the team with 45 yards rushing against the Giants last week. Mind you, he entered the game halfway through the third quarter. I know a lot of those yards were garbage time, bend but don't break yards, but still, AD and CT need to get going so Josh Johnson can have an easier time picking apart the Jaguars. If he can, if he has it in him. But it's not all on the running back shoulders. The offensive line needs to open up some running lanes. Trent Williams had probably his worst game of his career last week. Morgan Moses is still banged up, but I expect more. Chase Roulier is holding it down, and the others just need to do their best to step in and give AD and CT some space to do what they need to do. If the run game can get going early, Josh Johnson's legs can take off, and his passing game will have an easier job. He showed some zip on some of his passes last week, so I believe he can get the ball to where it needs to be when receivers are open for small windows of time. I truly believe he can go out there and surprise some people. I'm not expecting a great game, but as long as the run game gets going, Josh Johnson should be able to make some things shake. And lastly, bounce back number 3. We need the Clinton Dix before the trade back. Normally it's before the money, but for him it's before the trade. Where is that He has been an obvious downgrade from Monte Nicholson since entering this starting lineup. His speed is sad. His pursuit angles are tragic. I don't even know who this post-trade Clinton Dix is. Like, really, who is this guy? And I'm not blaming him for all of the struggles on defense, but he is a big part of it. Before the trade for who is on a 1-year contract, mind y'all, the Redskins only gave up 22 or more points once in 7 games. Now they've done it 5 times in 6 games. Before the trade, the Redskins defense only allowed 322 yards per game for 7 games. Now they've allowed 425 yards per game in the last 6 games. Before the defense allowed 400 yards or more once in the first 7 games. After pulled up on us, the defense has allowed 400 yards or more 5 times in 6 games. Like I said, it's not his fault, but he is a major part of the defense's decline. He has been bad ever since we've got him. I thought it was because he was getting acclimated to the defense and the scheme, but bad pursuit angles and lack of speed is not growing pains from learning a new defense. That's just playing poorly. If we can get the that we thought we were getting when we traded him, that can dramatically improve our defense's effectiveness. Good news and bad news though about going against Cody Kessler. The good news is the defense doesn't have to worry about Cody Kessler as much as other quarterbacks, but if Clinton Dix has a significantly better game than he's had for us so far this season, then I might have to take it with a grain of salt because it was against Cody Kessler. And that was it for the bounce backs. But now in other news, as of 12 a.m. December 14th, I'm not exactly sure of who will be out against the Jaguars, but I do know who practiced on Wednesday and who didn't. Guard Tony Bergstrom, outside linebacker Ryan Anderson, wide receiver Josh Doxson, defensive lineman Matt Ioannidis, tackle Ty Nsekhe, tight end Jordan Reed, and of course quarterback Colt McCoy. All did not practice on Wednesday. It's looking dark for them as far as playing this Sunday in Jacksonville, but a few of them should end up playing. Also, to add to that list of hurt players, wide receiver Jamison Crowder, linebacker Sean Dion Hamilton, tackle Morgan Moses, running back Adrian Peterson, center Chase Roulier, and tackle Trent Williams were all limited in practice on Wednesday. Cornerback and returner Greg Stroman is on the injury report, even though he was a full participant on Wednesday. Also, as far as the Jaguars, wide receiver DJ Chark, I forgot that's where he got drafted, honestly. Safety Cody Davis, linebacker Leon Jacobs, and offensive lineman Jeremy Parnell did not participate in their Thursday's practice. DJ Chark has actually already been announced as out. Also, their kicker Josh Lambo was limited. I do not know why the Redskins have not put out their Thursday's injury report, but at least the Jaguars did for me. And in even more random news, the Redskins have worked out 3 offensive linemen this week. Guard Caleb Johnson, guard Jordan Morgan, and tackle Norman Price were worked out this week. Caleb Johnson had been on several teams and is yet to ever play in an NFL game. This is what we've come to, Redskins Nation. We're just out here looking for anybody to come block for us at this point. Hopefully we can find a diamond in the rough though, but this is just crazy that we're doing this for the 2nd straight year. Injuries happen, but I don't know why injuries hit us harder than anybody else. I don't know what we did wrong. But that's it for this episode. Thanks for the view. I'm excited to see who's going to go out there and show some passion, pride, and potential. I'm also excited to see how Josh Johnson looks against a great Jaguars defense in such short notice. But make sure y'all Dolemite fake punch that like button, favorite, subscribe. I'll subscribe back, and most importantly, comment and share. And again, thank y'all for the support. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.